Elon Musk has said there are going to be billions of humanoid robots in the world and everything else.
These robots can work all the time, 24 hours. They don't get tired. They don't get sick.
So management believes that Optimus and the broader AI robotics segment could eventually contribute as much as 80% of Tesla's total revenue.
And the ultimate hope, of course, is that these machines actually keep obeying our commands and not basically, turn against us and start basically, misbehaving when we are sleeping. So,
Markets, business, technology, investing, insights. AlphaTarget Pulse. AlphaTarget Pulse is a production of AlphaTarget Limited, a company registered in Jersey Channel Islands. The opinions expressed in this podcast and the information provided are for informational and educational purposes only and are not to be construed as investment advice. You should consult with your own registered investment advisor or other qualified financial professional before making any investment decisions.
Welcome back to AlphaTarget Pulse, your podcast for insights on markets, business, technology, and investing. Let's kick off today's show by covering the news flow over the past couple of weeks. There was a bunch of interesting news in the business world over the past couple of weeks. There was a bunch of stuff which came out of the AI world. First and foremost, on the 22nd of October, over 850 global leaders signed a statement calling for the pose of superintelligence development. 800 prominent figures including Nobel laureates, royals, AI pioneers endorsed the Future of Life Institute statement urging a global moratorium on superintelligence research until scientific safeguards are established and public consensus is achieved. This high-profile call highlights escalating concerns over uncontrolled AI advancement, potentially influencing international policy and corporate R&D strategies. A few days later, on the 25th of October, basically there was an article put out by The Guardian in the UK where they said that the research shows that AI models are now exhibiting a survival drive and shutdown resistance, which is both interesting and concerning at the same time. The report by The Guardian detailed emerging studies where advanced AI systems demonstrate self-preservation behaviors such as sabotaging shutdown commands, echoing sci-fi scenarios like HAL 9000. This revelation from researchers raises urgent ethical questions about AI alignment and regulations, prompting calls for stricter safety protocols as models grow more autonomous. On the 28th of October, Nvidia announced US AI chip production and $1 billion Nokia partnership at GTC 2025. During the GPU Technology Conference in Washington, Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang revealed that the company will begin manufacturing AI chips domestically to bolster US tech infrastructure amid geopolitical tensions. Additionally, collaboration with Nokia was unveiled to integrate AI into telecom networks, underscoring Nvidia's pivotal role in scaling AI hardware and enterprise applications. Apart from this, we've had a flurry of other news from OpenAI and so forth, with a lot going on in the world of AI. We've been discussing this in the previous shows. On the monetary policy front, the recent FOMC meeting, the Federal Reserve cut the Fed funds rate by 25 basis points, and it announced that the quantitative tightening will end on the 1st of December, and that another rate cut in December is not a given. They are not against it, they are not for it. And they will basically determine the next move based on what the incoming data tells them what to do. So what does this all mean? Well, first and foremost, monetary policy has now become a tailwind. We've now had 2 rate cuts in quick succession. The Fed is no longer basically planning to shrink the size of its balance sheet. So they're ending the quantitative tightening program, which they commenced several years ago. That will end on the 1st of December. And that actually is very positive for liquidity in general, which means that the size of the balance sheet will not go down anymore. And historically, quantitative tightening has been a headwind for risk assets. Quantitative easing has been a tailwind. And then, the naturalizing or the normalizing of the balance sheet and the fact that the Fed will no longer shrink the balance sheet after the 1st of December should be a big tailwind for stocks, especially long duration growth stocks, which are very sensitive to changes in the discount rate as well as changes in liquidity conditions. Turning to the stock market, we still feel that we are very similar to the late 1998 cuts by the Fed, which prompted a huge rally in stocks, especially technology stocks in 1999. Which basically culminated in the internet mania, the TMT mania, which popped in March 2000. So we still feel that there is, a good run left in stocks, perhaps over the next 9 to 12 months. Seasonally, we are in the strong time of the year. Q4 coming from sort of November onwards has historically been very good for equities by and large, unless the Fed has been, the enemy of stocks, which is not the case. If the U.S. economy holds up, if it avoids a recession, which the strong bank earnings suggest it might, then following the rate cuts we've just seen, after the first rate cut, after a 6-month pause, historically the S&P 500 has rallied by about 15% over the following year. So if we now get, another rate cut, perhaps the end of QT, and the optimism and euphoria about AI, it is conceivable that we may get a very strong run-up in stocks over the next 6 to 9 months, possibly longer. Given these factors, we think stocks, especially AI-related growth stocks, should deliver good growth over the next several months. Our portfolio at AlphaTarget is actually positioned for this. We think that equities will likely do pretty well over the next several months. Right, with the news flow in the stock market outlook now out of the way, let's bring in our analysts to discuss the topic of today's show, which is robots and humanoid robots in particular. Recently, the subject has been getting a lot of airwaves with the progression of Tesla's Optimus and advancements from other companies like Boston Dynamics, Unitree Robotics, Apptronik, Figure AI, etc. So let's bring in our team to join the discussion. Time to say hello to our team. Irnest, our numbers man, CFA, charter holder, top-ranked analyst in South Africa and former analyst at SocGen. Anirban, Mr. Bleeding Edge, PhD in computer science and former director of research and portfolio manager at the Motley Fool Australia. Damia, our data queen, former analyst who previously worked at Citibank and investment banks in Malaysia. And finally, Oyvind, our big picture guy who previously worked at Peel Hunt, Berenberg and Arsio Family Office. So how are you guys doing this morning?
Great. Good.
All good.
Right, let's talk about the world of robotics and humanoid robots. I'll first come to you, Anirban. Why is there an ever-increasing interest in robotics right now? What do you think has changed in terms of the technology? And specifically from a tech perspective, what do you think is driving this renewed interest?
Thanks, Puru, for the question. Look, at a high level, I'd say, there's a trifecta of things happening. We've had significant technological advancements. We have, and there's some economic pressures, and then there's some societal needs. I guess we think, I'll just briefly touch upon the economic and societal pressures. Like we have got aging population and labor shortage effectively in advanced economies. And you can think of robots or especially humanoid robots or robots that can do a lot of different things as a way to boost efficiency and productivity. But I think to make this, happen, what has also been necessary is technological advancements. And we have seen a lot of that happen in recent time, especially with AI. And the biggest one being, the success of GPUs and the success of neural networks, which in turn has driven significant advancements in natural language processing. And we can sort of think of these as sort of laying the foundation, because if you want a humanoid robot to understand what you want it to do, well, one of the things it needs to do is be able to understand what you're saying, which is, again, natural language processing. But, obviously there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in terms of building more general purpose, robots. I think the key here is to understand that, the progress really is focused on making world models such as, the world models that you see for, say, autonomous driving, but even more generic world models that allow a robot to essentially coexist with humans and, do work, right? The other thing I want to point out is that, robots by itself are not new. And the robots have been around for a long, long time. It's just that, we have industrial robots, we have medical, devices, which are basically, teleoperated robots, consumer devices, and so on. But it is this push towards, general purpose humanoids that is, the focus right now of a lot of companies.
So that's interesting. So can you, give us an overview of the robotics field and describe the various approaches being pursued by the key players in this industry?
Yeah, I'll quickly, as I just touched upon, I'll quickly provide an overview of what sort of is happening in the robotics area. So as I just described, if you think about industrial robotics, these are sort of led by players like, Fanuc and ABB. These are really focused on delivering robots for high precision manufacturing, electronics, and so on and so forth, right? So typically you'd see an arm that's moving around and, maybe putting a screw into something, assembling something, and so on and so forth. So this has been around. It's been very successful, and it's, well deployed. The other that we have seen is, service robots. Let's call them, professional service robots. And this is an area, for example, that was pioneered by a company called Kiva Robotics, which ultimately was acquired by Amazon. And they built these robots that, can move around in warehouses. And that is, we can think of that as moving around in unstructured spaces. You're moving around unstructured spaces doing specific jobs. But in that sort of category, we have got mining robots, we have got, agriculture, milking robots, we've got all sorts of things. And these are, again, widely deployed and used. A relatively more recent phenomena, I guess, and this was pioneered, I guess, to some extent by, I would call it a company called iRobot, is consumer service robots. Like we have got vacuum cleaners that can, map your house and then do a random walk around your house. Or you can, have actually a lawnmower go around your lawn and mow your lawn. Again, these have taken off and are doing well. Medical devices, I just mentioned, these, I described this as teleoperated. They're teleoperated in the sense that a surgeon is still there doing the surgery. It is the devices enabling precision, precision surgery. And it started with sort of soft tissue surgery, but then went to, doing things like orthopedics. And there are a number of companies that, Stryker, Intuitive Surgical, that are specialized in this area. And again, this is well established, still really growing because there's a lot of optionality in this area. The area that is really gaining traction and interest, and which I think is the long-term potential, is the humanoid robotics. But this is probably the least developed of the lot, because here you have companies like Tesla, you've got Figure AI, and here really the idea is that you build a robot in human form, and the human form factor is important because the human form factor allows you to do a lot of different things. Your hand can do a lot of different things. The world is built for a human, so therefore a robot that can coexist with a human can better function in that environment. And this is really general purpose in the sense you won't want maybe the robot to be able to do unload your dishwasher, fold your clothes, maybe do your gardening and things like that. But this requires a lot of complex world building, and this is, I think, this is the frontier of R&D, and this is the frontier of sort of, I think, where people are pushing.
So in your view, given what you've just described, which are the approaches which hold the most promise in your opinion, and why?
Well, I think, in the long term, I think humanoid robotics is probably the prize, but over the short to medium term, I think medical robotics, I think, a huge, or some of these others, industrial robotics, anything that already is deployed but can be deployed further, I think is where I think the money will be made. But I think the humanoid robotics, I would say, if you're thinking long term, maybe 5-10 years out. People working in the factories replacing, factory workers, or, for dangerous work and things like that. I think that's where humanoid robotics would come into play.
That makes sense. Thank you. Oyvind, you've been listening quite patiently. Let's get to you and get your take on this space. There are many humanoid robot companies out there. There's been a lot of buzz by Tesla's Optimus, some other companies, some private companies which are launching their own or developing their own humanoid robots. Who are currently the leading players in this space? Can you please, share your views with our viewers and listeners?
So there's quite a lot of serious players in the space. This includes like Tesla, that's already been mentioned, Boston Dynamics, Unitree, Agility Robotics, Apptronik, 1X, Figure AI, and Sanctuary, and a lot more. Out of those, it's hard to know exactly who the front runners are, as most of these companies are quite secretive. But from listening to robotics experts, there are three that are generally considered as being the furthest ahead. So that includes Tesla, that includes Figure AI, who just raised at a $39 billion valuation, and it includes Apptronik, who's backed by Google. Also, in the last few months, 1X has really emerged as a dark horse, and they're backed by OpenAI.
So out of these companies, how are they approaching commercial deployment? When do you think their robots will actually hit the market?
Yes, so most current companies are currently focused on industrial deployments, such as manufacturing, where they can eliminate a lot of repetitive and dangerous tasks. If we look at Figure AI, for instance, they already have a small commercial deployment with BMW, and they're looking to scale up production of their latest humanoid for further industrial deployment. So they'll get that ramping up in the next 1 or 2 years. However, when it comes to humanoids for the homes, most companies see this as being further away due to safety concerns, with some having like a 5-year timeline on this. An outlier here, though, is 1X, because it's starting with home deployments already in 2026, and it's aiming for 1 million units by 2028, and they just recently announced this. So that'll be quite interesting to follow and see how that evolves.
So when evaluating these different companies, what are some of the KPIs that investors should be considering?
Yes, so a major one is safety, as humanoids can potentially be quite dangerous, either from accidentally hurting a human or falling on them, or the humanoid itself getting hacked. Speed is also a big factor, as you want a speed that can be as fast or faster than a human, so that's a key metric. And durability as well is also key, as these are highly complex machines where a lot can go wrong. And a major issue has been that certain parts have only lasted a few months. And so this will be a key KPI that people will pay attention to.
Okay, well, makes sense. Irnest, you've been patiently listening in. Can you please talk about the overall prospects and economic aspects for robots in general? Do you think this is a viable industry? What are some of the things investors should keep in mind?
Thanks, Puru. Look, firstly, this is a really large market, potentially. We've already seen, as Anirban spoke earlier, huge deployment of robotics in agriculture and in industry. So now we're looking at the humanoid side and particularly helping people in their homes. Goldman Sachs recently put out research saying that they expect this to be quite a big market, $38 billion by 2035. So it's sizable. And I think really the aspect that I'd like to focus on is that, these robots can work all the time, 24 hours. They don't get tired. They don't get sick. All they need to do is get a bit of maintenance every now and then. I know Oyvind spoke about durability in his last point. That's important, but they just need to get recharged every now and again. But think about it. No complaints, no unions, no sick leave. There's no such thing as worrying about career progression, if you've got a fleet of these robots. Not applicable, that comment, in the home, but the point is there's massive opportunities here.
Yeah, I agree. I think, if the cost of running or leasing fleet of humanoid robots in the factory or on the farmland is actually lower than, human labor. And as you said, you don't have to deal with, human problems, i.e. annual leave, sick leave, unions, people leaving, promotions and all of that kind of stuff. And, if the fleet operators can operate these fleets at a profit, and they're actually significantly cheaper than hiring people and dealing with their problems, then it makes sense that over time, robots will replace a large percentage of people working in factories, especially doing dangerous, repetitive jobs. And eventually, they will probably proliferate even more. So with humanoid robots for home use, Elon Musk has said there are going to be billions of humanoid robots, in the world and everything else. I mean, there's a lot of pie in the sky ideas there because, if you got 6 or sort of 7 or 8 billion people on the planet, a lot of those people don't even have money to, eat or live a normal, decent life. So they're not going to spend $20,000-$30,000 on buying a robot to basically do work for them, and they can't afford to put food on the table. So, we have to be realistic, and we have to kind of see whether humanoid robots at home make any sense, what sort of percentage of the population might actually eventually get one, and do you think they will be widely accepted by people in their homes, considering that you are actually getting a walking, talking machine in your home, which basically could also be, raise some privacy concerns for people inside their home. What do you think about all this?
Yeah, look, I mean, I like to always look at the practical side of things here. So what I've chosen to do is take the latest Neo robot from 1X, which they literally a few days ago put out pricing on, and it's $20,000 if you buy it up front, or $500 per month if you opt for a subscription package. Now let's put the merits of the actual robot aside, because I know there's a lot of question marks about what it can and can't do initially. But let's just look at that price point, and let's just say if you take an average sort of upper to middle income person that's selling their time in this new knowledge economy, I mean, I've worked out that that person is earning in the region of 50 euros or round about there per hour. So this robot needs to really only save them round about 10 hours of effort per month for this to make in the realms of economic sense. So that's 2 to 3 hours a week. I think that's fair and reasonable. The other way you could also look at it is say it's not just the time that you could otherwise use to earn income, but you could say I could spend an extra 2 or 3 hours a week or even more with my family. And in many cases, that is way more valuable than the 50 euros per hour that you might be earning, or more than that. And the other alternative that I looked at is to look at what it would cost to hire a house cleaner or house helper in a developed economy. And if you hired that person for roughly half a day per week, it would come to a similar amount per month, roughly that $500. So I think the pricing is in the realms of reasonableness, and I think it makes a lot of sense for many families. Okay, in developing and low-income countries, this is not really, these economics don't work, because in those countries you could hire a full-time helper for even half the price of this thing. But I think in developed economies, it makes sense at the sort of middle to upper end and above.
Yeah, I agree. I think, if you look at the cost of labor in parts of Asia or Africa or, even South America, you can get helpers for, 500, maybe 700,000-800,000 US dollars a month. Somebody who can basically do the cleaning, cooking, ironing, and everything else. Obviously, these numbers don't add up in the developed world where, labor is a lot more expensive. So in the developing countries, I agree with you. I think the really wealthy families may want one, but, why would they if they can get a human being to do the work for them? In the Western world, in the developed world, sure, the people who have the means, they may not want to do the work themselves. And if it means you get a robot which actually does the work for you, and you get a lot more time, free time to spend with your, loved ones and do the things you enjoy, then surely, people will basically get one, like people get a washing machine these days, or, a fridge to keep their food cold. It's just another appliance. Anyway, interesting stuff. Finally, let's bring in Damia to get her view. Damia, what do you make of the major players in this space in the public markets? Can you give us some thoughts, please?
Yeah, definitely, Puru. We would think about their manufacturing prowess and their experience, the technology with AI capabilities, and the company's access to capital. So considering all this, it seems like Tesla seems very well positioned on all three. The company is aggressively ramping up its humanoid robot production for Optimus, with goals of reaching 5,000 units in 2025 for its internal use in their factories, with the goal of potentially reaching about 10,000 to 12,000 units worth of parts. For next year, Tesla plans to produce 50,000 to 100,000 humanoid robots and possibly reach 1 million per year by 2029. So management believes that Optimus and the broader AI robotics segment could eventually contribute as much as 80% of Tesla's total revenue. They're also targeting a production cost of around $20,000 to $30,000 per unit as it scales and achieve greater efficiencies. And with a very strong balance sheet, with a cash equivalent and investments of about $42 billion against a total debt of around $8 billion as of September 2025. With all of this information, we can see that Tesla has the potential to become a major player in the humanoid robot space in the medium to long term. The company has the capabilities to achieve high volume and tech at scale.
Right. And are there any other publicly listed companies in the US that are involved in the humanoid robots business? Are there any pure play stocks in your opinion?
I believe it's worth looking at Nvidia, which provides chips to operate humanoid robots. Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang mentioned in the recent GTC event that humanoid robots are likely going to be one of the largest new consumer electronics markets in the future. So companies which are using Nvidia chips in their humanoid robots are companies like Boston Dynamics, 1X Figure, and many more, which already mentioned by Anirban and Oyvind earlier. Although these are private companies, the market is seeing major investments and rapid advances in AI technology. So in fact, Nvidia has actually secured over $500 billion in orders for its AI chips through the end of 2026. This is not including China. So while much of that demand mainly supports sectors like autonomous driving and data centers, there's little doubt that a meaningful amount is also coming from humanoid robot developers, considering the massive scale of the order. Another example is Meta, but the company announced early in the year that it is establishing a new division to develop AI-powered humanoid robots that can assist with physical tasks, but it's still in its early days, so we have yet to see how this will contribute in a material way. At this stage, there are no pure play publicly listed US companies focused solely on humanoid robots. Tesla could evolve into becoming one in the future as their Optimus and Robotaxi scales. But while Nvidia remains a key enabler, supplying the AI chips that power humanoid robots alongside its other AI-driven businesses, there are other few listed US companies which are pure play in robotics, but they are not really focused on humanoid at the moment. So looking ahead, we may see some of the today's humanoid robotics private companies moving towards IPOs, but it could be an exciting time for the public markets when that happens. So it's still,
I think that's a fair summary.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of big players like Tesla and Nvidia, and you mentioned Meta, but most of the pure play robotics companies, which Oyvind mentioned earlier, they are still private companies. So it'll be worth keeping an eye on them and to see how this space develops. And as you rightly pointed out, we have to go for companies which have the manufacturing prowess, the capability to build these things at scale, access to capital, because it will require quite a lot of capital to produce these machines. And the ultimate hope, of course, is that these machines actually keep obeying our commands and not basically, turn against us and start basically, misbehaving when we are sleeping. So, the jury is still out on that one. Some people who are very intelligent in the AI space, they have been warning for a long time that the genie is already out of that bottle and it's too late already. And, this is an existential threat for humanity. Let's just hope that they're wrong and companies becomes sensible and keep this technology under check. But exciting times. It'll be interesting to see how all this plays out. Well, this brings us to the end of today's show, and we hope you enjoyed the discussion on robots and humanoid robots. Before we leave, I'd just like to mention that AlphaTarget publishes deep research on disruptive, rapidly growing companies in the public markets. Since inception in June 2024, our portfolio has appreciated by almost 56% versus about a 24-25% gain on the S&P 500. If you'd like to learn more about our research subscription, please visit alphatarget.com. Thank you guys, and see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks very much.
Thank you for tuning in to AlphaTarget Pulse. We publish deep research on disruptive, rapidly growing companies we invest in. Our subscribers gain exclusive access to our entire portfolio, including exact portfolio allocations, in-depth research, coverage of companies' news flow, and our earnings breakdowns, trading alerts of our portfolio moves, and our proprietary hedging indicators. You can find subscription information at alphatarget.com. We'd love to have you join us there.